All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? Welcome to the PM Therapy Live podcast. I am with a very, very special guest, Fola, and I'm really excited to speak to Fola about her journey. So today we're going to be talking about Fola's career journey, and it's going to be more like storytelling. Although Fola is challenging me that I'm going to be in the hot seat, and she's going to also, interview me as well. So we'll see how that goes. All right. So, but before we move further, I would just let Fola introduce herself. So, Fola, please, can you introduce yourself to the people that don't know who you are?
Okay. I'm Fola Falabi, and I call myself a lifelong student of leadership, business, and project management. I've been in this space. It's kind of scary for me to think about it for over 2 decades. I landed my first role as a PM for the Department for Transport pretty much about 20 years ago. And it's been like, I wouldn't say smooth sailing, but it's been a fun ride ever since then. And I've been privileged to work in Africa, in Europe, in North America, and even stuff in the Middle East at the moment as well. But the beauty about all this is the fact that there's so much that ties back to project management. But I am just all about elevating that and helping organizations, leaders, to pretty much become strategic project leaders, where we bring strategic leadership and project management to create value. And that's kind of what I'm actually about. So I'm super excited to have this conversation. Thank you for having me today. And yeah, we're going to be talking about hopefully Muftah's journey, not mine, because I want to know a little bit more about that. But our goal here pretty much is to leave you way better than you came into this podcast today. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. All right. So, what's one thing that people might not know about you from reading your LinkedIn profile, Fola?
Okay, one thing that you might not know about me is I believe I tell people I don't actually have a job. I see all of this as a lifestyle. And so when I think about the work that I do, it's fully integrated. And my kids almost feel that, mommy, like it's like everything's kind of project management, but I talk about it at home. And it's just like cooking, like there's so many ingredients. But as long as it's all about the taste at the end, I bring it all in and I create the outcome that I want. And so I'm a mom of 3. If you don't believe that, you probably may not know that, but I bring in strategic leadership and project management into everything that I do. It's a little bit crazy as well, but yeah, it's so much fun.
Okay, nice. And if you don't mind sharing, how old are your kids? Like, what's the age range?
Oh God, listen, they have to wait for my book. You don't want to bring it all out. Like, you want to tell everyone everything? Okay, I'll give a little piece of it. I've got 15 and I've got 8. No, turned 9 already. My goodness, time is gone. And 8. So 9 and 8, yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So they're, they're quite, my kids are, I have 2. My first is 10 and my second is 7. Sorry, I always have to do the math. That's why I'm just whenever I go to the doctor, they always laugh at me because always have to like do the math. All right, so your kids are pretty grown. So that's interesting. So you have this project management lifestyle.
Yes.
That sort of infuses your home and everything that you do. So the reason I was asking is because, like, for me, in my personal life, I tried to switch off.
Oh no.
Yeah, because so. I'm very organized in my like day to day, but I feel like I need an outlet.
Okay.
In my personal life, like I deliberately, I don't know, maybe I'm doing this subconsciously, but I'm not as organized in my personal life. Like I can be messy, I leave things all up. But in my professional life, I am very like organized, detail oriented. I don't know. For you, it seems like it's not the case. Right?
No. For me though, that's why I say I think about ways and how I could integrate the things that I use in business into my personal life. And that's really what the transformation has been for me. It's that shift. And so when we think about planning, for instance, my daughter is writing her book. It's called The Project Detective. Because we talk about project management. It's like, Mom, like we need to talk about this. So she has like, hopefully she'll be out before the end of the year. And we take project management principles into the world of play. And, it's all about, it's going to be a continuous series. And I hope she's going to write it till she gets old and gray. But it's always going to be something that the project detective will have to solve throughout her life, her lifetime. So from challenges at school or stuff at home. And so we've infused the concept of play into project management. So where they can plan, they can get organized and get things done. And so what I've actually been able to do now is I kind of think about life as a project. And so I think about if I want to achieve an outcome, I always need to think about where exactly am I going? Why am I doing this? Who are my stakeholders? What exactly do I really want to achieve at the end of it? So kind of like the way I think in the workplace. And then I've been able to kind of walk backwards. And I found that this mindset, especially being more inclusive now, because my kids say, Mom, we are your stakeholders as well. I'm like, of course you guys are. But it's like that concept kind of gives me an outlook of, okay, how can I be better and how can I actually improve? But this inclusive methodology has helped me also get the kids into understanding and enjoying project environments and strategic leadership. And now, they take it into their work, they're more organized, and we have like whiteboards and stuff at home that you put like sticky notes, they've got like those flows and all that. And for me, people might say a little bit too much, but for me, I can see the results. Like my kids are pretty much by default, it just now comes naturally for them. Right. And I enjoy it because I said I quit a job because I wanted a lifestyle. So I'm like, how can I really infuse that and make it a lot more fun? So it's not like it's hectic and it's all, how can I just make it like part of everything that I do? And that's why I also coach people outside of work, project management, to help create a better, personal life and better relationships as well. So it's pretty much as magical, I feel.
That's so interesting. And we might get into this later on. But one of the professionals out there that's really afflicted with burnout is the project management profession and the program management profession, right? So I think that maybe this infuse, like when you see it as a lifestyle, like you don't really have this separation between, I don't know, maybe that's one way to combat burnout. I don't know. I'm just
yeah. And I think when we think about burnout, first of all, what does that really mean? Like we are kind of like overstretched and overdoing things. So you feel that you've got so much to do, not enough time to achieve it, and you're like, how can I? And we're scared of failure. That's pretty much the thing. Like you cannot drop any of the balls. And how I see it is, you need to start thinking about how can I leverage tools and stuff for people around me to make my life better. A lot of the times we want to wear the superhero cape all the time. As PMs, you're planning, you have your teams, you have all the deliverables, there's just 5 million things going on at the same time. And the times you need to just step back and say, who else can actually help take some of this off my plate? And not because you're not capable of doing it, but because you know that you have people who you've hopefully enabled to take on those tasks as well. So being able to manage it, and I said when I call it a lifestyle, there are things that now I can delegate even to my kids at home. I can actually ask my husband to do. I could ask my team members because I know I'm now comfortable, because I know I have been able to train, support, and empower them to help me do that. And so for us, we really need to step back and think about every single time. I have a quadrant that I created as like a 4-box little cubes. I think about what is urgent, but what is most important is actually going to give me the highest level of return. Mm-hmm. So high impact, easy to achieve. And high impact, harder to achieve. That's the other box. And at the bottom part, we have the low impact, easy to achieve, and low impact, hard to achieve. So every single time with everything that has to be done, you need to think about what are those things that are high impact that are easier to achieve. And I use that even at home. So it's all of those principles. So I teach my team the same thing. So when you come in, you look at your part of your team, say, what do we need to do today? That's going to give us the greatest return. Mm-hmm. What's going to help move the needle for the organization? What exactly do we need to be doing as well that will ensure that we get the results and we get it as fast as possible? Because at times when you do those analyses, you may just find out that you've been struggling with the low impact harder to achieve. You never even realized it.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And what do you use, like in terms of just being tactical? What do you use for this quadrant? What do you use, a tool? Like how do you
No,
you
no,
know?
no. For me, I just keep it very simple. I have like my notebook. I bring my teams into like pretty much the room, and just we do a plot. We look at our plans and say we need to analyze that as a group. We
Mhm.
know what needs to be done. We look at the project plan, we look at the deliverables, look at the portfolio, and we kind of say, based on resource capabilities, based on what needs to be done, like you can already tell, we know it's going to impact our business by X, and it's something that we could easily get done. So we can just pretty much create that easy and get it off the chat, and that goes on the priority list. And
Mhm.
for my personal life, the stuff that we already know, and I say, what do I need to be doing today that's probably going to bring me more income in my business
Mhm.
faster?
Yeah.
But at times we just find that we're doing some other things that are not. At times we think about tools and stuff, but just keeping it simple,
Yeah.
just it's just the way to go.
Post-its, yeah. No, no, amazing. I love that. Just quickly, for those of you that are watching, use the comments, ask questions, chime in. I see Osama, just left a comment there. Successful managers that who let the system work and maintain the same issue, and the senior maintain the remaining. Okay, maybe you're still in the middle of typing that, but Osama, thank you for chiming in. But for all of you, that are watching, please feel free to chime in, ask questions while we continue the conversation. So, Fola, can we now go back a bit because we want to talk
Okay.
about your career. So before I want to drive this conversation in three parts. Like before you
Okay.
became a PM,
Okay.
while you were a PM, and then PM leadership, right?
Okay.
So let's go back. What was it? What was it like for you before you became a PM?
Okay, interestingly, before I became a PM, I have got a first degree in philosophy, interestingly, and I did a postgraduate in management, and then I did an MBA. However, within that journey, I have to give Mr. David Allaby the credit for this. I heard about project management from him the first time when he was about to go do his Prince 2 exams. At the time, I think we're just friends for about a year or something. Like, what exactly is this whole project management thing, right? And this was like 24 years ago. And then he was like, it's about planning and management. At the time, he was into Oracle and IT and technology. And I was really fascinated. At the time, I was into like recruitment and HR. And I said, and I did a bit of like a customer care and those kind of support. But I was in school as well because I was always at every time in my life interested. I seem to have always been going to school or studying for something because I know that I was in a postgrad at the time though in management and leadership. But either way, I could already see a lot of similarities in the things he was talking about as to like being more organized, how you plan, how you get results. And I was actually fascinated. I said, I think I could see myself doing this. And as well as I could already see a lot of the stuff he was talking about in the stuff that I was currently doing, but there was just no structure in it. And so I took that away. I remember when he did his exam, I got the Prince 2, that's Project and Controlled Environment, which is kind of like the PMP equivalent in Europe. And I said, let me look at this. I kind of had the book and I put it on the side. But believe it or not, what was fascinating was that at the time, I remember I looked at the jobs. They were earning like £300 a day or something. I'm like, oh, this is a good one. Like, why don't I check it out? And so I said I definitely wanted to explore that. But in between the transition of me doing like, customer service and optimizing operations and switching to getting the PM role, I started like mapping my current role and what the kind of PM was actually meant to be doing. I could see similarities when I had to lead teams and do stuff already. And that created a roadmap for me to say, I think I can truly pitch this. And I remember going in and started reading the Prince 2 textbook, the book, and mapping it out. And I did my resume. I remember throwing my resume out. Oh, goodness. You don't even want to know. The first job I ever landed. You guys just relax and let's take a deep breath as we take this. Okay. I felt like, what have I got to lose, right? I sent in my resume. This was for a role for the Department for Transport. And when I got into the interview room, guess what? Just imagine how many people were on the place to interview me. Just have a guess, Mufta.
3, 4.
There were 10 people.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, for crying out, I'm like, this is just like a project management. What is this? Is this like, am I running to become the next CEO or something? All this was like, what's going on in my mind?
And so just to be clear, this is for a PM role at the Department of Transport, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yes. And so at the time, so I just felt, just have fun. Anyway, I think at the role, he kind of had the role of assistant project manager, because what had happened, I found that the PM actually had an accident.
Oh.
And so they kind of wanted someone who could come in and backfill before he actually felt, way better.
Okay.
So anyway, so I remember getting off the train at Charing Cross. Also, yeah. I got in the room, and so when I saw the people, I'm like, oh gosh, you're not getting the job anyway, right? And so I dropped my bag. You know what they said? Do you want tea or coffee? You know what? I'm like, I want tea and coffee.
Nice. And juice and anything you have.
But seriously, I was just more like, relaxed. Rather than even being interviewed, I was the one interviewing them because I kept asking questions. I'm like, why are we doing this? It was like a major IT transformation project. I was asking questions around, because in England, we've got the Department of Transport. We've also got the National Rail Service as well. So I wanted to understand how the systems actually how they interacted, what were the links, had this similar project been done on that particular part of the business. And believe it or not, I guess they were probably fascinated, right? Because I was more curious. I wanted to know what methodologies were actually being used, why they were doing that. Mufta, that was the fastest job interview that I ever converted into a role. As soon as I finished that interview, before I got off from the place to the train station, the agency had called me to say, Fola, when can you start? Wow. I am telling you. And so when I look back, I could already see the path around me always being curious, always asking those questions that a normal PM never really thinks about. I really wanted to really know, how does this connect with the business decisions? Why are we doing this? I was always one who wanted to know why.
Okay.
I wanted to understand the bigger impact every single time. And I never realized that there was anything really so strategic about this. But it was just my mind of just always fitting into things and wanting to see all the interconnected layers of things.
Yeah.
But that was kind of it. You want to say something?
Yeah, no. So this is so fascinating. So when you applied for this role, you were in recruiting HR. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. I did human resource. I also did customer service and customer retention. But I did project. But what I did then was I was able to demonstrate the projects that I have already done. I did stuff within IT within my group, but my main role was within that particular field of business. And so the difference here was I was able to demonstrate the projects that I have already led and the support I've done within technology that gave me a chance and a seat at the table at that time.
What gave you the confidence? Because this is Department of Transport. This is very different. And you're not even right now. You're not technically a PM, right? Well,
yes,
you led project, but you don't have the title.
Apart from that, I didn't even have this certification as well, because they were shocked. Because I remember when I said I didn't have my Prince 2 at the time, they're like, are you sure? Mm-hmm. Because believe it or not, right, I had read things, I had married all the ideas, and I could already apply that to my role. You see the difference? So although I never showed up and said I had a designation, but they never even could believe the idea I wasn't even certified yet. So what was key there was what I have something that I do with my clients is more like a career mapping sheet, where I'm able to help you map out where you're at and help that fit into the box of where you want to be. And how you show that you may not have the current title specifically, but these are the things that you've already done that role already entails today. Because don't forget, it's all about demonstratable abilities, right? Yeah. How can you demonstrate that? The only way you can show that is, for instance, you can say, I have never been, for instance, someone who wanted to become an entrepreneur and said, I have never run a business before. I'm like, yes, you've never done it. But what are the ideas that you've had to been able to launch? What have you done on your own without anyone? Mm-hmm. And so when you go into, and an angel investor, you're going to be like, why should I invest in you the same way? You need to show that there are other things that you have done that align to where you want to be, and so you give them that confidence. And that's why I said I never knew I was ever going to get the job.
Wow.
I remember other interviews that I had actually already messed up. So don't forget that wasn't my first interview when I was trying to break in.
Hmm.
I remember doing jobs at the banks and all that. And then I'm like, oh, what exactly is going on? Before this particular one that I felt more relaxed, I just said, Fola, just do you and just explain the value that you are capable of bringing. That was the difference. The ones that I felt that, yes, I'm all ready and everything, it never converted into a role. But the ones that I just said, just go in and show that you're curious. And then that was it. That was the beginning of, you say happily ever after if you say that. But that was that push. And so I got that role of assistant project manager that gave me, foot in the door. And it's been like a fun ride ever since.
Nice. So a couple of things that stood out for me. First of all, just instead of going in there, bracing yourself for an interview, it's like you're going in there and even trying to control the narrative and, asking questions, like, making it more almost like a consultative kind of interview, like asking questions. So that's one thing that stood out for me. And it just sort of, I think it evens the playing field in terms of the power dynamic, right? Because they have a problem. That's why they've invited you. And you are sort of maybe even asking thoughtful questions that maybe they haven't even thought about before.
That's right. And another thing I want to just say quickly is, and the dynamics there, imagine what I was like 20 years ago. So I don't want to say how old I am right here, but I was young, and the people in the room I'm talking about, we had the senior responsible owner. We're talking about male, we're talking about people like I was really intimidated, and so like, Fola, just enjoy yourself. And so that curious mind, the fact that I was fresh, I really wanted to learn. I said, I am just here to make things better. I want to know as much as possible so we can ensure that we are truly successful. And every single time you come into a room and say, I just want to add value. I don't really care about whatever has been done in the past, but whatever is needed to ensure that we are successful, sign me up. Yeah. And that was how I came into that position, from a space of being just a learner, from a space of saying, I'm going to do whatever it takes to ensure that we achieve success.
Nice. Love that. And the other thing that stood out for me is when you talked about the career mapping. So you're clear on where you want to go. And then you look at what you've done, and then you now start to identify qualities, from your current or from your past that match where you want to go. So I think that that's also a very useful exercise. And I think that a lot of people that I talk to, many people come and tell me, oh, I want to pivot to project management. And a lot of times when you now like dig further, like they already are project managers, but they just without the title.
That's right.
I was speaking to somebody and I was like, so tell me about your project experience. And then she mentioned, I started a business, and then I was a project coordinator here. And then when I looked at her profile, like she was like an operations leader in a top company. And, she has like all these diverse experience. I'm like, oh, like this is very relevant experience, right? She led teams. So I think a lot of times people sell themselves short. So I think that exercise would, number one, it will make it crystal clear that, you're not pivoting. You're already doing it, but it's just about how you articulate what you've done, right?
Yeah. And for those who actually listen, I want to give like pretty much $1 million tip here, which you're going to be getting for free. I know he's already about to write. I can see most of us like pen on paper. The piece you need to realize is that when you get into a role, HR is never going to change your title every 2 months when you go and you do something different. So the piece is that when you have your resume, you have your operational title, which is what you get on your contract. But within that resume, you need to be able to divvy up and break up all the different pieces of things the different kind of titles you've actually held. For instance, you may have worked with the CEO on a particular initiative, or maybe you were handpicked to do something. You led that group. So you actually project manage that. And so on your resume, you could have a subsection that says project manager of this particular piece. Mm-hmm. Or you could actually say you were like the senior strategic facilitator for this. You're a strategic advisor here. That's a subtitle because HR will never change your title every single time, except maybe you have like a major promotion or something happens, you get a new contract. But at times people kind of feel that I never had that title. Yes, you never had it officially, but you did it. And so in your resume, you need to be able to qualify that and have that as a subsection to say, I did this, I had in charge, I did all this other, fancy stuff. And that's where things actually shine. And that's the only way you can also probably ever get the interviews, because then the system can actually see that at least you've done something similar.
Yeah, no, 100%. I usually like to say there's a difference between your role and your title, right? So your title is what is officially given to you, but you could be a software support engineer, but you are leading projects, right? So your role there is a project manager. So you don't want to do yourself a disservice by just putting the contractor title. And a lot of times, like, your actual title doesn't, it doesn't quite capture.
It doesn't reflect everything. Exactly.
You want to be smart about that. And not misrepresent, but you also want to be smart about that. So, love that. So, Department of Transport. Now, from Department of Transport, were you?
Do you have my resume?
I've done my research. I've done my research. So, you were an assistant PM. Did you become a PM at the Department of Transport?
Yeah. So while I was there, the assistant, the PM didn't come back. And so pretty much I kind of just fully got into that actual role and led the project and all that. Yes. And as I said, even within that particular role, I also got to do other things. As I said, I've always been one where I don't know why I love like the leadership group. And so when it comes to strategy, I always wanted to know, what else is coming when they go to the House of Commons? Because it was the Department of Transport, right? Things that relate to the government and stuff, I always watch the news, and then I come back to meetings and conferences. I'm like, how does this affect us? So I always had that drive when it comes to leadership and stuff. And so that influence, I gained that easily just because of maybe it's the philosophy that I did. I never thought I was ever going to use that degree for anything, but kind of always wanted to know why, and diving deep in being that support system kind of gave me that exposure. You're smiling. Times if you gotta go to school, you're like, are you ever gonna, what did I do with that? But now I go back and I say, goodness, that gave me like a solid foundation around critical thinking, questioning the fundamentals. I never just take things on the surface, right? I want to know why and what could we do different, and how does this tie into what are the reasoning behind it, psychology as well behind it, which I guess is another key probably ingredient that's also helped me through my career.
Yeah, for sure. Critical thinking is something that I really advocate. Maybe this would be a topic for another day. I was going to ask how your parents let you study philosophy. As Nigerians,
we can unpack that here. Let's just hold that for a little bit. But the thing is, now I realize that it was the foundation. Then I look back, even when I go into currently, I'm doing a doctorate at the moment, and you see, there's a reason why people get a PhD. It's called a Doctor of Philosophy. It doesn't matter the discipline. There's something about what philosophy gives you in every discipline. Be you a medical doctor, an engineer, whatever. It's something that is like so critical and so important. And so I'm super grateful that I did it. But yes, that's another podcast. And for that one, you're going to have to pay at least $1 million for you to unpack that.
For sure. So in this early period of your career, Fola,
yes,
what was the most challenging or the toughest period or situation that you faced?
I think for me, it was the age factor. I was so young. And I was in a field, you can imagine, I go into rooms, we're talking about IT. It was more male dominated as well. You don't even want to imagine a young female woman in a room. There are times in meetings where I'm the only woman and the only person that looks like me in those particular spaces. And people who have got like technical backgrounds, they talk about, how the UX and, all this fancy stuff when it comes to tech and IT. And quickly I went to go do ITIL at the time because I'm like, I need to know this. So rather than just waiting for the information that the tech teams and the SMEs come and they give me, I wanted to understand what exactly was the architecture like, how were the testing. I learned I even did some testing for some of the projects. I volunteered. I was a PM though, but I'm like, what's really going on? Can we do some tests? I ran, I did that. I really wanted to like dive into understand that. And so for me, one of the key challenges though was more of the factor of I at the time didn't have that technical grounding from the IT perspective, but I was able to cushion that by getting certifications, getting supported and mentorship. And what else will I say was a challenge that I had as well? I think it was maybe just a technical piece. And I think that's really what comes to mind for me because nothing else jumps out. Maybe I asked a lot of questions. I don't know if that was a good or a bad thing, but I asked a lot of questions and it probably, it helped me a lot. But on the challenging side, I think it was just a technical background and I was able to fix that pretty quickly by getting the training and the support.
Okay. So three things I'm hearing. You said age, you said, in a male dominated space, and then
Yes.
the lack of experience or lack of technical experience there. So how many people are facing this right now. How do you go from that challenge and not cowering? Because many people will, it stifles them. Like, how do you go from that? What's your mindset in terms of surviving that?
Okay.
And moving forward and maybe even using that to your advantage, because you mentioned that you ask a lot of questions. I've been in situations where I ask questions and I was I was castigated for that.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
He was like, I told you this 5 times in public, and it hurt. It didn't stop me, but it's not easy. So how do you go from that challenge, that mindset to maybe even turning that to success?
Okay. With everything, the theme of what I always say is act as a PM, but think like an executive. And so every single time that I show up in spaces, although I have my current role, but I always want to frame whatever it is in line with whoever my audience actually is. And so just like asking questions, I tend to do all of this offline. Close doors. You need to have allies. You need to have people where you've got safe spaces to lean on, share, and actually learn from. Because at the end of the day, no one has all the answers. But obviously, you don't want to seem as though you're incompetent. And so you want to be able to build, some people get coaches, some people get mentors. For me, I tell people, I wasn't fortunate enough to have even a mentor through my career. I figured a lot of these things out on my own. I got burnt. That's why I say you don't need to start from experience. Learn from people who have walked the path and understand, where they failed or where they did things that didn't give them the outcome they wanted. And then you can turn that around and create something better for yourself so you don't make those mistakes. And so turning it around for me was more about a lot of research. I was lucky because I had a PM at home in the household. And so I can come back home and say, oh, gosh, babes, this actually happened. Like, what are your thoughts on this? And then I did a lot of research, but ensuring that you have people who you can go in and say, gosh, we were just talking so much gibberish in the office today. What does this truly mean? Or what are the things that are actually unsaid? That's another piece. Because we think about the things that are actually being said, but what are those conversations that have actually been left unsaid? Or why do you think why did the VP why was he so quiet during that meeting? What exactly does that truly mean? The cultural piece was what I had to learn. I remember where there was another technical analyst, for instance, on the team. He was the lead IT transformation expert. And we almost kind of butt heads because he felt that he had, knowledge. And apparently, in hindsight, I realized that he actually wanted the payroll of the PM, but he never got it. And I came as an outsider and I got the role. And he felt that he had a technical background. But to lead a project at times, I know you need a technical expertise, but the relationships building, the management and the setup is absolutely critical because at times when you're so technical, you get into so much detail that you lose sight of what really needs to happen, which he never really had. But after some time, I was able to coach and mentor him. And then he realized that, oh my goodness, this is really not a battle between Fola and myself. It's more about how can I build those capabilities to prepare me for the role of a project manager that I truly want. And being a technical expert doesn't equate to you getting the next promotion or getting you up the ladder. It's all about how you can translate ideas into tangible outcomes. And so that's the reason why we've got technical leads and technical, teams, right? And that's the reason why a CEO or a CFO might not really know all the rudimentary basics, right? But he knows enough to answer the questions that are actually needed as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, a couple of things that I'm hearing: you need to have allies, you need to have safe spaces where you can ask questions, because it's good to be curious, but you also need to sort of read the room, right? You don't want to. Your credibility is very important, because I usually tell people, like, as PMs, we don't lead with, we don't have authority, so you need to be able to lead without authority, and the way to do that is to be as credible as possible. Right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So that stood out for me. Another thing that stood out for me is, you don't need to be as technical as possible, but like things like relationship building, being able to I guess shepherd the endeavor, right? Being able to read the room, right? Being able to influence people without authority. I think like that is something that's very critical, and maybe that's something that you should even double down on and lean into, right? Because that is your own core competency, right? As opposed to, know enough on the technical side so that you can drive and lead.
Yes.
But your core competency is execution, right? That's sort of, what I got from what you said. Any thoughts there?
No, yeah, I think overall there's something in psychology that I love. It's I talk about cognitive flexibility. It's a skill that everyone needs to develop, right? Your ability to actually switch, even when it comes to like idea. You one who is agile. I was given this illustration when I traveled. I just got back from Dubai a few days ago, and I looked at my fish tank, and I said there were three fishes in there, and I realized that one had actually passed, and I said, how come you have the same species of fish in the tank, the same environment, and some actually thrive and some don't? I'm like, what's changed? Like it wasn't the case that I massaged one or I did something different to the fishes in the tank. And then what stood out for me was about flexibility and adaptability. How, so within that, things maybe the temperature may have changed a bit, something may have changed, but there's probably one that kind of felt that maybe I'm not comfortable that way. Your ability to actually be adaptable is a key skill that you need. Being flexible to change when it comes to ideas, being curious enough to ask the questions. But again, when there's a pushback, you're okay to say, okay, it's not the right time. So that flexibility, that agility, it's the key skills that everyone needs. And true to form, even when you look at the World Economic Forum, when you look at the top skill for between now and 2030, it stands out as top that every professional needs today. And so when I look back at my career, and I can see that I have always been one who's actually been flexible. I've gone from managing project to working on quality management to doing strategy. I've just been open to say, what's needed, I can actually fix it. Being flexible, just being seen as a resource that can create value and solve problems. That's exactly what because I hate people calling themselves product managers, really. Like, it's like, okay, it's a title, but really what you've been hired for is to solve problems and add value to the organization. Mm-hmm. And so if it means that there are times where, you have to get in the more than get your hands dirty a little bit, that's fine. If it means that there's an initiative that probably doesn't even connect to the product, but it has to be done, that's also okay. You are not going to say, that's the job description, and that's exactly what I was brought in to do, right? Yeah. Anything outside of that, I cannot. Success for me has always been just being open-minded, being more adaptable, just being, okay to say, we need to fix that. That's okay, let's do it.
Yeah, no, for sure, 100%. So speaking of adaptability, so from Department of Transport, you moved to the New York Stock Exchange, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And how was that? Like, was that because you went from public sector to, I guess, finance?
Yeah. The switch. It was interesting. So what happened was, what was a good one was, it was actually, it was an IT company that got bought over by the stock exchange. So we used to support the back end of the trading platform.
Okay.
And so it was also like IT from that perspective.
Okay.
And so it was kind of like a linear shift. I was actually went into work within the PMO space. And then that IT firm got bought over by the stock exchanges. So we supported the back end. So automatically we became the New York Stock Exchange. And so that created that easy shift for me, but it was within the project space. And it was more about I'm just trying to think about what was the interesting piece around that time. Well, yeah, it was an IT transformation piece, but the merger, the acquisition was kind of made it easy for me, and that was how I switched into the financial services.
Okay. So you went from UK to the US, right? Were you at the US?
No, it was in London. We were actually in the UK
Oh, I
base.
see. I see. You were in
Yes,
the UK.
yes,
Okay.
we were in the UK. Yes,
And then from the UK, you moved to Canada.
yes.
Okay. So what was that like for you, the move from the UK to Canada? Because I know it's when you came to Canada, you now moved into PM leadership roles. Is that correct? Right.
Yes, so even within the role within the New York Stock Exchange as well. So I worked within the PMO, and pretty much I led teams within that particular space. So I kind of already was exposed to leadership when it came to that particular role. And yes, when I moved to, I kind of moved, it was kind of like back and forth. You know, when you came in, like I landed here, like, do I really want to stay? You kind of go back and forth. And forth.
I did that.
Yeah, you did that as well, right? Like, okay. But anyway, and in between that, I think I kind of did some other little consultancy pieces here and there. You can't really put everything on your resume. So like those are like the big organizations I actually did work for. But I had done some other support stuff for other organizations. But from there, though, the major move for me was when I came into to Canada to make Canada home, and a headhunted me because I remember it was just like a couple of weeks. I'm like, do I really want to stay? Do we want to go back? And I was in Toronto at the time, and then they moved me to Calgary to manage the PMO for Fortis Alberta at the time.
Okay. And how did you get found? Because now were you because right now you're
I had my resume. So what I did when I knew I was moving, so I put my resume, I think it was on Indeed or something, one of those online sites that I was available. I think it was Indeed. Then LinkedIn wasn't as popular, right? When you think about like years ago. And so the recruiter saw my resume then and said, are you available and stuff for work? I'm like, why not? And at that time, I was actually being interviewed by Morgan Stanley. So because I was in financial services, there were teams because I was in the former Lehman Brothers building in Canary Wharf. And it was interesting that I had people that we used to have covered. Like, when I was interviewing, they're like, what are you doing in Canada? I'm like, why did you leave the UK? So I almost switched back to the financial services, but that role was meant to I had to go to Montreal to do that role. And I wasn't really French speaking. I'm like, do I really want to do that? So that piece was kind of in the background before I got the opportunity to work for Fortis. That brought me to Alberta.
Okay. And you've been in Alberta ever since. So now that you are in I guess you're a PM leader, you're in PM leadership. What would you say is different, right? So in that transition from being a PM to being in PM leadership, are there some things that you had to unlearn? Are there some things that surprised you in that transition?
For me, I would say, like, if you probably go back and you think about my story, some people might say, Fola, you were probably just born a leader, or you've always had it in there. So although even when I was like an analyst, I talked about the way I asked questions, I really wanted to understand the bigger play. I think I've never really wanted to play small. And so although I never had those titles, I was always one who always saw things. It's kind of like boots on the ground, like eyes on the horizon every time. And so it was one that I just feeling like a glove. There were things that I was always asking those questions with the directors, the VPs when I had the chance to, and taking the role to manage the PMO for Fortis Alberta at the time was it was easy for me. It was more of a case of like, how can we really transform the space, and how can we make product management beyond just tasks, time, and schedule. Because this particular PM role, the PMO team kind of sat within IT, which is what you see. Like the product management space is always driven by technology, right? And then you see that there are other pockets of, we had operations that had a product management group that were based in Erdry, I think, at the time, and working to see how we could actually really merge. Because for me, it's I don't really like so many silos. I know that there's beauty in doing things like in different spaces, but for me, I always felt that what can we really let, what can we share? And maybe because I'm more of like a I want to bring everyone in, so it's always easy for me. So in space, I'm always like, you're doing this, right? So why are we reinventing the wheel? So a lot of the conversations I always had is always, what can we leverage from each other? What efficiencies can we really gain by pulling together? And so with that mindset, it's always easier to pool and bring things and become, elevate that. So organizations see greater value and more efficiencies. And so what did I really have to unlearn when I think about that was maybe forgetting a little bit more of the technical stuff and maybe thinking more, because I always thought about the business. I'm trying to think about what I had to unlearn. Maybe I just have full disclosure here. For me, it's something I've always struggled with. It's more about, I think people call it the politics that happen in the workplace. And so it's a case of I kind of had to learn, because I'm almost like an open book, right? Where I say, you can already tell kind of how I feel. If there's a problem, I really like, Mufta, can we have a meeting? Can we sort it out? But I kind of saw at that level, that leadership, people were like smooth in the locker room. Like when people talk about different things. When you come into the room with the executives, they say something else. And then I'm like, what's really going on here, right? He's like different shades of gray. I'm serious. Because I'm like, are we really working towards the same goal here? And so really, I had to like really step back and say, how do I really play this? Are you like, is it like a different Fola with this team? Is there a different Fola there? It was also a little bit of a struggle, and also probably what escalated me to start my own business. And so it's
you're tired of all the corporate crap. They're like, I'm just gonna start my business. So yeah, like the politics thing is something that at first the way I was like, okay, I don't like all this politics, but you have to, because you have to sort of work with it, not play politics, but like politics will be there no matter what, no matter how good the company is, because resources are limited, and then people have different agendas or different priorities. So you need to be able to work with all of that, right? And steer your initiative to its destination. There was a question that I was gonna ask, but it was very important, but maybe it will come back.
Okay.
So was there anything that, like, I guess, how did you learn to quote unquote play politics?
No, I think for me, I then saw it more as, I won't call it politics anymore, because I had to go learn this. And so what the safe spot for me was I had to lean on my direct line manager, which became the game changer, because I was getting burnt out. I was getting like super frustrated. But when it came to delivery, now I just say, guess what? Boss, my work here is to make you look good. I'm here to deliver value to you. So tell me what I need to do. And then when I hand over everything to you, whatever way you want to massage it, every way, you just go do it, so I can relax and create value for you. So that was my own strategy, to say, now I want to leave you to pull the stronger levers and let you just feel comfortable. As long as you're comfortable with my work, because I almost got burnt. There are times where I remember in this role, but fast forward, so I don't want to call the organization yet, but I was in my room as a manager. I remember there was a day a VP came into my office and said, Fola, I'm going for a meeting. I want you to come with me. And then I'm like, okay, it was my lunch time. And so I just packed up my lunch, and then I went off. This was a C-suite meeting. Then we talk about when you get in the second floor, in the other tower, we have the big bosses there. We're talking about multi-billion-dollar conversations. We're talking about lessons learned from like a major initiative that actually didn't go so well. Like I'm talking about, this is the big deal. At the time, I was just a mind. I'm talking about, this is like 5 levels ahead of me.
Wow.
But there were ideas that my VP had already said, had spoken about. He knew that, oh yes, this lady's capable of doing things. But that was also a problem and a challenge that it almost became a downfall for me as well. Because after that, like different talks, oh, Fola is like, the next shiny thing in the organization. I'm like, oh my God, hell no. And in hindsight, I probably would have maybe said, can I run this by my manager first? Yeah. Because when I came back, because my manager was like, hopeful, I learned that you were at that C-suite meeting. I'm like, listen, I was just pulled in you seriously. Like, it wasn't like planned. It wasn't anything, but it almost became a little bit of like some friction afterwards. Yeah. Because then my name was kind of being called in different spaces to say, I want you to lead this, I want you to lead that. It was kind of good, but I now felt so uncomfortable because at that time my boss wasn't.
Yeah.
And so now learning from that for other people who are actually watching is like, you don't want to put anything, you don't want to do anything that gets you, because he's the one that makes the direct decision when it comes to your career. Yeah. When they feel threatened, then there's going to be a problem.
Yeah. The relationship with your manager is probably one of the most important relationships in your life.
Yes.
Right? Because you spend most of your life at work, and that relationship has the ability to affect your mental health, which spills over into your personal life. So
yes,
you want to make sure that is
tight.
Exactly. That's good. That's tight. Like, you have that person's back. You're loyal, right? I mean,
yes.
Things happen, but if that's not right, it affects everything else. And if it's not good, then start looking for
another role.
Exactly. But like, that relationship is very important. I think sometimes we just think, okay, this is work, I'm just gonna, but it's as important as other relationships in your life. Like, you want to make sure that's
yes, that's key.
Amazing. Fola, you want to do some lightning round before we wrap up?
Oh, as in answer some questions or ask you questions?
Yeah, I will ask you questions, and then whatever comes to mind, you.
Okay.
You good with that?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right. Are you a morning person or night owl?
Oh my goodness. I have always been a night owl before, but now interestingly, I kind of say I'm hybrid. I never knew I could ever be a morning person because I was so dead and I dragged things in the mornings. But now in the last couple of months, I've been able to switch because I've had deliverables that I've had to deal with countries that had that different time zone. And so I realized that I'm currently both now.
Okay. Awesome. Nice. Hybrid. What's your superpower?
I think relationship building and just being a people person. How did you tell me? What do you think is my superpower?
I think so as well. And, maybe we can pause the lightning round here. Do you think, because I think that it seems like this was very central to your success. Like, you're able to, with your personality, you're able to bring people together, you're able to rally people and all of that. And I think that it seems like that has been key to your success. What about somebody who is maybe not as extroverted? I'm sure you coach people that might not necessarily have your type of personality. What advice would you have for them?
But interestingly, I'm actually not an extrovert. Do you know that?
Okay. No, I didn't know that.
You see what I'm saying? When people see me, but you people just have this perception I'm actually an extrovert. Interestingly, I'm an ambivert. And the key though is I could be like indoors and stuff, and it's a lot of work to actually interact. But when I'm in spaces where I can share that same energy, I want to add, when it ties into my purpose, that's why I say I believe that I'm really doing stuff that's in line with my purpose, what God has actually called me to do. And that's why it's different. And then I get energized. And so apart from this, everything else is so draining, like to say and talk and chat at times, I cannot. And so I think the key though is always ensuring that you're doing stuff that in line with what brings fire in your belly. And so people see project management as a profession. I said it before. For me, project management, leadership, it seems like a lifestyle. For me, it's more about how can I help people really achieve purpose? Like, how can they earn more? Financial freedom is great, though, but create a life they truly desire. And that's what it is. And so that makes me excited. That's why I could decide to, even if it's 2 a.m., I could wake up and still do this. But for some other things, I cannot. But people who just feel that they're extremely introverted, always tie back to what's, again, brings the fire in your belly. So when you look at all of your work, the things you hate, think about how you can outsource it. I say, whatever are your strengths, like you might say, I'm one that maybe I'm good as analyzing information and data. So let that be what speaks for you and interact based on that piece and say, I have this information, is what the information is about, and let that be what you use as a forefront to get people together, because you know that's where you are comfortable in. But don't go in and say, I'm an introvert, I'm a PM, I want to go do a public speaking talk. You're going to kill yourself.
Yeah.
But connect around the specific things that you know still lights you up. So that way it's easier for you to lean into that, because you're never going to realize how comfortable you are going to feel, because you know you're doing something that you are just so grounded in.
Yeah. Double down on your strengths. Love that.
Yes.
What's the worst PM advice you've ever received?
Oh, as a PM, you need to focus on the triple constraints alone.
That seems like in the 18th century. I don't know. Like when I hear triple constraint, like sometimes like that triggers me, But yeah, no, nice.
But believe it or not, I have still, even up until like recently, someone says, "Oh, you're making project management impossible," right? I'm like, how come an accountant can be an accountant when they get out of school and they've got a path to become the chief financial officer? Why? They just are looking at the balance sheet or just doing the profit and loss. They elevate and say, what is EBITDA, right? How do we connect? They're looking a little bit high. They're connecting to what executives actually care about. And how are we going to create a path for product planning professionals to have a seat at the table? They need to see a part on how they can connect back to strategy. And that's the only way. And there's also nothing wrong with saying that I want to just start as a PM and stay a PM. That's okay. But you should also be comfortable to also just stay earning $120,000. But if you feel you want to get the nicer cars, you want to get a bigger life, whatever your goals are, you know what I mean? Then you need to say, what do I need to do differently to create that path for success?
Yeah. No, all said. What's the most interesting project you've ever managed?
I've managed so many. The most interesting one, I would say there was one particular. It was one where we had to create a full system integration when it came to IT, but we also had to create a project management method and setup for the entire organization. So at the time we had siloed project, because we had like bigger product pipelines, like Energy East, like Keystone pipelines and all of that. And now we had to create an overall system where every project, every group had to follow a specific methodology. So it actually involved, when you talk about stakeholder management, like technical piece with different groups coming together, talking about process, putting together a systematic approach for everything from cost to product to leadership. It was huge, but it was one that it was a lot of fun because we had the good, the bad, and the ugly. But at the end of the day, it was a success. So it was one that involved like so many people, so many teams, different perspectives, different methodologies. But believe it or not, we had to create consistency across, multi-billion-dollar organization.
Oh my goodness, that sounds like fun. All right, what's your biggest pet peeve in meetings?
Oh, just someone just going like just on and on and on, like flogging a dead horse. At times you kind of say, okay, this didn't go well, we've got it. What can we do differently? Because you hear the number one thing that PMs actually are not great at. They know how to poke holes and show problems, but they never come with a solution. There is a problem, I know that. But what have you done to give us options to say, how can we fix it? This was on the critical path. Okay, we get it. So what are the things that we need to do now to ensure that we can bring things back on track? Do we need resources? Do we need to change something? But don't just show up with problems, because listen, there's so much problems in the world, right?
and I think that even there's a subconscious thing that people feel when they now start to see you. Like it's like whenever I see you, I know that you're gonna raise my blood pressure. Right?
Exactly.
You don't want to be that person, right? So people might not know, but like when they're now thinking of cutting people just want, all right.
Can you just get rid? Exactly.
Yeah. Let's this is my Advil. Let me just
exactly. Because the thing is, people don't realize that we spend the better part of our lives in the workplace. And that's why I say I want to make it fun, right? We want to make it, that's why I say we want to make project management, we want to make the workplace a lifestyle. People don't see when I'm in a team, I don't see that's another project. We enjoy every single day. People are excited to come to work. Even I teach at a university. I get students who say, I did a night shift, but Fola, I cannot afford to miss your class. Right. That's how fun I make it. It's so relatable. They can connect. They can take things and take action. And that's what I want to make the world. I want to make the world a better place. Mm-hmm. And so we can, let's try and do this together. And so like those people who just come in and say that person is a problem or there's a problem. I know there's always a problem, but what are the solutions or what do you think we could do to make things better?
Amazing. Awesome. So we have some questions. Do you I know we have a few more minutes. Do you have time to do a few questions from?
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's fine.
So Brian says, I tend to deep dive as much as I can with a potential partnership with mindset, where can I add value? Okay, so basically he tries to dive deep as much as he can, and he usually has this question, where can I add value? What skills do I have to move the business? What are experiences that are similar to what I've overcome? So
okay.
I think, yeah. Do you get the question?
I think, and hopefully you can probably just chime in later, Brian, and see if I answered your question. I've got a framework which I created. It's called the ORV framework. Think about this: organizations, reward, value. 3 words. And when I spin that around, it becomes opportunity, risk, and vantage. And what I mean by that, every single time you think about what opportunities can I actually see. And when you think about opportunities, a lot of the times we always feel that it has to be one new business idea. But no, it could even be the fact that if you're within IT or you could be in infrastructure, you may have gone to a conference, you've seen that there's a new tool that could help solve a particular problem. You want to just say, oh, there's an opportunity there. I could share this and say, could we leverage this tool? Could I learn a new skill? Could I even do a launch and learn with my group to share a new idea? At times we feel that we are not competent enough we need to bring the superpower from outside. No, you want to raise your hand up and say, I think I could fix a particular problem and I could share my perspective. Opportunity. Every single time you see that, how can I make things better? R for risk. Every single time you want to see, how can I help reduce risk exposure? And you need to think about it beyond just your project, beyond your team. Is there anything else that you could be doing that could affect a different portfolio, operations? And then when I talk about the vantage here is, so what are the steps we then need to do to make that happen? What steps can we take now to leverage on that opportunity? And so does that mean you go back and do an assessment? Is there a capability issue? But you can go in steps. I go in and I teach leaders, and we do this, and we can almost see from the value chain where their value leaks and how we can feel that. But you, as hopefully your CEO of your life and your business and everything, because as a PM or as a professional, you're running a business. You either work for a business or you own a business. Either way, you're in business. So either you show up at work, you're going to say, how can I solve a problem? And so when you identify what the opportunities are, when you can actually see what the risk factors are and how you can mitigate them, then you can always create a plan that becomes the advantage for you and your organization to achieve that. And that's kind of been my guiding principle that I use every single time. And it has always created results all the time. And so it's that mindset shift to say that I am not competent enough, or maybe it's a mindset of, can I really fix that problem, or can I really show up and say it's possible? You can always body up with someone or move to and say, how can I fix that? It's that mindset shift, knowing that you can definitely be the change that the organization actually needs and speak up.
All right. Awesome. Brian, ORV, I hope that answers your question. Osama says, we must be in a good environment and I guess be good at communication to help manage issues that arise. Nice. Okay, so that's more of a comment than a question. Thank you, Osama, for chiming in. And Robin says, Fola, I would love half an hour with you. So Fola, that will be up to you. Robin Clayton. You can sync up with Fola afterwards. And Militia says yes, the chief project officer role will become the mainstay. All right. As we show value through leadership strategy and PM excellence. What do you think about this? Because you didn't quite mention the chief product project officer role, but what are your thoughts about?
Yeah. For me, though, I have a slightly different perspective. Finance, people call it the chief product officer, but I feel that we need to be connected to more of the chief strategy officer, because projects every single time always seem really temporary. And within organizations that kind of projectize, like I have worked in organizations where we have multi-billion-dollar projects, for sure. You need a chief product officer because he's kind of the PM. He's running the show. Although he has that title, he's more of a C-suite executive. But when I think about a normal organization, a normal structure that we see things today, the way PM can truly connect seamlessly will be connecting to strategy delivery, products, and value. You see what I'm trying to say? So for organizations who don't even understand what product actually is, telling them now and say, you need another role called chief product officer. Like, why should they? You know what I mean? It's the harder change for that to just come in as a new role. But when we can connect to what currently exists and say that we are really here to help you ensure we achieve our strategic objectives. And this kind of how we can influence that. It's more like an easy way to seamlessly integrate those positions. I know that we're going to start seeing product managers who are going to rise to those chief strategy officer titles easily. And that's why I pretty much created strategic project leaders as an organization, creating those competence where they begin to understand strategic intent, they can execute on it, and they can actually create value. So it's just a direct link that seamlessly links you to the C-suite.
That's such a good point, because I think that's been one of our big problems with the PM. Is like a lot of times you just plateau. Like people don't know how to move
break
fast, right? So for product managers, they have a line all the way until the C-suite, the chief product, marketing all the way onto the C-suite,
yes,
finance, everybody. But project is like, where do you just plateau. But at the end of the day,
let me just say something quick. I'm sorry to call you, because the word project already seems temporary.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so because it's already a temporary outlook, when you look at project, they kind of say, so why do we need you up there? You know, and just come deliver a piece of work and leave. Yeah. But until we start changing the narrative around, this is so critical for us to help shape what happens before he becomes a project, so we get it right better. Yeah. So we increase the project success rate. And that's why we're trying to create a new level of competence that ties back to shaping strategy, because a strategy of an organization is one that feeds right into the projects. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think, that's why I usually like to say, okay, our core competency as project managers program is executing on strategy, because strategy will always be there. And that's what leadership cares about. But how do you execute strategy? So, but what I'm also hearing you say, there is shaping strategy and then there's execution.
That's right. So, that's right.
Are we doing both as the
thing is, so pretty much the main ethos of my doctorate research is I want to explore what executive and project leadership, strategic collaboration in strategy design will actually look like. So I'm putting it out to say, will we be able to increase project success if hopefully we have maybe leadership people in the PMO being part of the decision making when it comes to, are we going to new markets? Why are we, what direction are we taking? Because that way you understand the reasoning behind the product, and that can easily be cascaded. Because at the times where I have worked with PMs who pretty much knew that the product was already doomed to fail from the start. Technology has actually shifted, or organizational direction has shifted as well. But before that information gets cascaded, we have sunk in millions and millions of dollars. Yeah. But think about the fact that if we had insight, PMs had insight into why or the reasoning behind the product. I'll give you an example. Imagine a company that has decided to go in a direction to increase revenue, but how do they want to do that? They want to become the next technology, whatever. They want to beat Apple. Let's put it that way. And then They're developing a new software to make that happen. And then with AI, right? Someone else releases a new technology that maybe when I went to AWS Summit in Dubai, they were talking about quantum now. There's a different level of computing that could go way, way further to actually compute and do some stuff way better. Then why should you even bother with a different type of technology that may be obsolete in the next 6 to 12 months? But if you're not part of those conversations, as a PM, there's nothing wrong. You're still delivering your project. But from a business standpoint, there's really no value in doing that because the switch will be beneficial now to a different type of solution because it's already been developed elsewhere. Yeah. So why bother with something that's actually going to change? You see what I'm saying? And so my question is, hopefully I'm going to be getting like interviews and surveys out. Do you think that there are things that would have helped you if you were privy to more information as a product manager, as a PMO director, as a project director? Because some of these conversations happen behind closed doors, and you kind of get handed over the mandate to say, okay, now go run the project.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like that context will help you a lot because otherwise you might just be operating in a vacuum. And maybe this now ties back to that triple constraint thing. Okay, I just need to just do the, but then, things change and, the environment is very, very, it can be very volatile and you need to be able to adapt. Going back to your point of being at that. But at the end of the day, if your goal is to deliver value, right? If your project is heading in one direction and you know that it's not going to deliver value, then you don't keep on executing. You go back to the drawing board and see how can you align to deliver value, right? So I really like. I think everything is coming back full circle. I'm being adaptable. The ORV thing that you talked about, and yeah, no, I think this, that chief strategy of that. I never really thought about it that way. Like that is.
And easier,
and easier because sometimes I'm thinking, okay, chief operations officer, maybe developing a different expertise and going into chief product officer, but that chief strategy officer just seems like a very natural.
Yes, and that's also why you then find even within the PMOs now, we now have PMOs that are now strategy realization offices.
Yeah.
You see, because now it's easier to communicate, like talking with a CEO and say that we are here to help you realize the strategic objectives.
Deliver strategy. Yeah.
That's the language of what executives want to hear. Mm-hmm. And that's where the disconnect happens. Like PMs are struggling and saying they're not communicating the language of the executive leaders. What do they truly care about?
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, it's funny how just your switching language can really just
change. Yes.
Yeah, as opposed to fighting for hey, take us seriously at all. Just
No, and it's another one thing that I teach and I train people and I say, you can complain about this from now till the cows go home. If you don't speak the language of the executive, what will get your attention? For instance, someone says, I have a bit of a back pain. I say, guess what? You've got 10 days to leave. Like, I'm just trying to say, like, you need to get the alarm bells. I say, guess what? If we don't actually handle this issue now, it's going to cost us $3 million because the cost of borrowing has actually changed because of what's it called, interest rates. There's so many layers. You realize that when you have a project, organizations are borrowing money to fund your project. Yeah. Tying it back to something bigger and better, we gain their attention, or your social license to operate is going to be affected. Yeah. Oh, we never thought about it that way. How are you elevating the conversation back to becoming more strategic?
Yeah, for sure. Amazing. Good conversation. Fola, so if people want to reach out to you, how can they get in touch with you?
Okay. You can actually get me everywhere, FolaAlabi.com on my website, on LinkedIn, Fola F. Alabi as well across all social media platforms. Say hi, let me know that you're on the podcast. But I think it's going to be a disservice. I know I did a post and I said I wanted to share 5 secrets, right? I know we kind of walk through some things before we go, and I want to ensure that I leave that. We've heard so much through my journey, but there's some things that I thought about and I took some notes and I said, you need to know this, because the one thing is strategy outweighs skill every time. Strategy. And what I mean by that is when you speak back to the language of executives, like speak the executive's language. When you do that, you're able to reduce risk, You're going to have upside potential. You have resource leverage. So strategy is one. The key one is about decision making. The way we think, the way leaders think, it's all about the bigger picture. So when you're having conversation, ensure that one, you elevate your talk to connect back to what executives actually really care about. Do not let the power of status quo hold you back. There's something about being comfortable. Like I tell people, I could have just been a normal PM or normal PMO leader and in my six figures. I was okay. I had a team, I had a great life. But stepping out of your comfort zone is where every success that you've ever thought about actually lies. That's number two. Number three is about execution is actually overvalued until you actually own it. And what do I mean by that? Ownership triggers a cognitive bias known as endowment effect in psychology. So when you want to get buy-in, when I spoke about ensuring that your manager is comfortable, when they own something, they're able to lead, they're able to shield you from all the bullets that are actually going to keep coming. There's something called endowment effect. Go do some research about that, where when you own something, there's the way you actually protect it. So when you've got ideas, when you've got stuff, make sure it's okay to hand it over. The people in leadership, share it and let them own it. When they own that, they become change advocates for you, and they are able to help clear the path for you to become more successful. Build your influence. Influence is way greater than actually intelligence, because obviously you're going to have the fundamental skills. You've gone to university, you've got the technical experience, but how do you build influence? Influence works because of the way the brain actually works, right? The human mind is wired to respond to confidence. When they see that and they know that you've gotten results, you've gotten things done, they are more open to listen to you even more, right? When you show up with strategic clarity, the brain actually mirrors that conviction. They know that, yes, I want to get things, I want to be connected to that particular person. So before you go into meetings, you want to be able to do your research, get the information, be prepared. This way you can start building. So spoke about when Mufta spoke about influence without authority. It's the key strength. It doesn't matter if you're a project manager, an accountant, but there's one that connects to success, and you can only build that when you're confident, when you know your stuff, and when you're also prepared as well. How many have I shared already? I think I shared 2 or 3 or 4.
Shared 3 so far.
Okay. Another piece around thought leadership. Some people kind of say, I want to move up in my career, but I don't want to become an influencer. No, it's not about going online and showing up, but being a thought leader around your space, most people see you as someone who has got authority or someone who's capable of going to the next level. I always love, we talk about interviews. Interviews are more like demonstrable abilities, right? You want an next role to become the vice president, but you don't have a title yet. But how can you still show that you have the capability of doing that? Have you shared stuff that reflects that capability? Maybe online, maybe within the team, or maybe showing up to say, I want to lead a workshop, I want to do a little training. You want to build a level of thought leadership within your organization, outside the organization, because your career is one that you design, and you can only navigate that by creating the perception of where you really want to get to and building that. And I think I'll wrap, because I know we're pretty much out of time. One that I tell a lot of people is about, I said before, act as a PM, but think like an entrepreneur. Think like an executive. You don't need to quit your job to actually become an entrepreneur. No. Always asking those questions. Always thinking about, if this were actually my own organization, what would I want from it? What will I do differently? How will I show up? And so that way, it's no longer a case of I'm just being paid to do the job. That's okay. But what about if everything was actually down to you, and it had your name on it? What kind of decisions will it actually make? And how would you provide the right information for the decisions to actually be made as well? So always think that way. Act as a PM, but always think like an executive. What would they really care about? And I think that's all. And if you want more, connect with me. I've got an actual research I created just because of this podcast that covers 10 key skills that you need that you can never get in any textbook, that can help you accelerate your career beyond your wildest imagination. Thank you so much for having me. So connect, Fola, and let's continue the conversation.
Amazing, amazing. That was good. So yeah, please collect with Fola. Get not only the 5 things that you talked about, but extra 5 things to help you in your career. This was fun. We should do this again, Fola, if you choose to come back. But maybe next time you can put me on the hot seat. I feel like
Yeah, yeah.
the hot seat.
I know you were really talking though. I really want to ask probably one question for you though. You've kind of navigated and actually done a lot of career switches. What has been the most challenging product you've actually worked on? The most challenging project?
That's a good question. So I think there've been. It depends on challenging from what perspective. So
No,
what, right? Sorry, go on.
no, anything. Like
Yeah.
what? Something that brought kind of made you come home and you're like, oh my goodness, I want to quit.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times the ones that are really painful. I think those are the challenging ones. And what's really painful about it is that it's not supposed to be painful. Like this is an easy project, but the politics, the misalignment, So I think one that's coming to mind right now is a project that I led. So this was supposed to be two companies came together, right? And we're now building this technology. So actually, this company bought two companies, right? And we now had to create this. We now had to fuse technology. So the politics
Mm.
that was involved because both sides were vying for their own technology and all of that. So it was just insane. And I was leading that initiative, right? So there is the technical aspect, like we want to deliver the next generation, and then there's also like the politics of people. Like it was insane. It was insane. So I think even still thinking about, there are some projects that when you think about them, you just revisit trauma. Like so, even till today, like I try to refuse to do a lessons learned because I don't have the courage yet. I need to, you know, just be in the right headspace and be able to now jot down like because sometimes I try to do lessons learned and I just get re-traumatized and I just okay, maybe another time. So
Yeah, for sure. I know. I've been there taking Advil and Tylenol, like the headaches. You're like, how can we do this, right? Different levels and different things. I think, for me though, it's always a case of really understanding this is stakeholder profiling. Because when you sit back and say, what are different interests here? Like really understand what is in it for these people. Because that way you can now understand and say, okay, because they are veering for this, because they are going to be the ones who's probably going to be at the end of the stick later on. The person who is screaming loudest now may not he just wants to say, yes, I did that. So times when you then get to see where the people are coming from, because when you go through this offline meetings and then people open up and say, goodness, this is what's truly going on. They're like, ah, I never saw it that way. So those personal conversations are ones that really help. But seriously, those traumas, we've been there. I know. I can feel the pain for sure. That's a masterclass for another session. But yes, I think that for me, I say with all of this though, everyone's growth is really up to you, right? You can decide and say that, I want to just stay stuck or I want to just push forward. We've been able to navigate this and create something bigger and better for ourselves just because we decided to think differently. You don't need anybody's permission to think differently.
for sure.
You need the courage to just stop waiting and start designing the career and the life you truly want. That's it. It's just you're going to say, I'm going to take the steps today. I'm going to map out my career. I'm going to say this is where I want to get to. What are the skills that I need? Who do I need to talk to? Where can I get the support? But how can I always focus on value? And I think maybe the last thing I will really say will be in everything that you do, make sure you make your boss a king. If you really want to move up pretty quick, I tell you, when your manager is comfortable, you are definitely going to see way more success.
Yeah, for sure. You always, loyalty. That's something that
Yes.
that would take you a long way. Awesome. That's a good place to end. Fola, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for chiming in. And yeah, speak to you soon. We're gonna be having another session next week, same time. All right. So take care, everyone. Bye, y'all.
Have a good one. Thank you.